You picked the wrong black woman to hassle tonight. General Veronica Carter's voice doesn't waver as Officer Keene wrenches her arm behind her back. The cuffs bite, metal digging until they draw a line of blood. Mouthing off to an officer, Captain Mercer says, standing close enough to cast his shadow over her. That's how people like you end up with problems. Carter catalogs everything. Mercer's badge number, Keene's nameplate, the crescent scar near Mercer's eyebrow. Search her jacket, Mercer tells Keene. The frisk is rough, performed like punctuation, but they miss the encrypted field communicator sewn into her lining. Get her in the car, Mercer snaps. A night in holding will cure that attitude. They shove her forward, forcing her head down as they cram her into the cruiser. They still don't know who they've arrested. Fluorescent lights hum. The processing room stinks of sweat and industrial cleaner. Carter holds herself perfectly still for the mugshot, jaw set, eyes level. Click. Name, the booking clerk asks without looking up. Veronica Carter. Address? She gives her Maple Avenue residence. The clerk pauses. That's Westfield Heights, he says, tone shifting. She presses a thumb to the scanner. Ink ghosts her skin. He watches her press her thumb to the scanner. Black ink ghosts her skin. Behind her, Mercer and Keene laugh near the water cooler, voices carrying for effect. Another one from that neighborhood acting special, Keene says. Thinks the checkpoint rules don't apply? Had to remind her, Mercer replies. Carter files the words, the cadence, every watching face. Phone call? She asks. The clerk nods at the wall phone. 1. Make it count. She dials from memory, not a lawyer, not family. Operations Center, Pentagon. A crisp voice answers. Authorization code Sierra Echo 941, Carter says. Initiating Oversight Delta. Transmitting location silence. Confirmed, General Carter. Response team en route. Timeline, 43 minutes. She hangs up as Councilman Ronald Pierce sweeps into the station, championship ring flashing under hard lights. More trouble? Pierce asks, peering through glass at her. Mercer nods. Just processing. Good, Pierce answers smoothly. Checkpoint refusers need consequences. The program is too important. Carter is escorted to a holding cell. The door slams. She sits on the metal bench, back straight, face composed. The clock on the wall reads 9:17 p.m. In exactly 43 minutes, everything will rotate on its hinge. 2 hours earlier, the sunset bleeds orange over Westfield Heights. 52-year-old General Carter drives her unremarkable sedan through streets she knows like a grid in her mind. The scenery shifts toward Greenfield's wealthier, whiter blocks. Blue strobes cut the dusk. Patrol cars choke the road. A checkpoint. She slows, window already lowering. She's done nothing wrong. This should be routine. Officer Keene approaches, flashlight beam skating across her face. License and registration. Carter moves deliberately, glove box slow. May I ask the reason for this checkpoint? Keene stiffens. Routine. I'd now. She passes him her driver's license. Keene studies it. The beam lingers on her address. Westfield Heights, he says into his radio, requesting additional verification. The emphasis isn't subtle. Is there a problem with my identification? Carter asks. Wait here. Keene returns to his unit, conferring with another officer, both stealing glances at her car, laughing. Captain Mercer steps down from the command trailer. Keene points. Mercer nods, strolling with theatrical slowness. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. The formality carries no respect. Why? My license is valid. Enhanced search protocol. Carter knows the law cold. Enhanced searches require reasonable suspicion. What's yours, Captain? Enhanced search requires reasonable suspicion, Carter replies. What's yours, Captain? Mercer's jaw tightens. Out of the car. She complies, movements precise. For the record, she says, this appears to be selective enforcement. We decide what's selective, Mercer answers. Hands on the hood. I do not consent to a search without probable cause, Carter states. Terry v. Ohio and Delaware v. Prowse establish. Look at this lawyer, Keene mocks, edging closer. Thinks she knows the law. I'm familiar with my Fourth Amendment rights, she answers. Your kind always complicates things, Mercer says, pretending to clarify with another word. My kind. Carter lifts an eyebrow. Troublemakers, Mercer says, but the subtext hangs heavy. Drivers in nearby lanes watch. Some raise phones to record. Mercer notices and gestures to another officer. Clear these cars. No recording. Carter notes Officer Doyle, moving car to car, making people pocket their phones. She imprints faces, badges, plates. Last chance, Mercer warns. Consent or face obstruction. I decline and request a supervisor, she replies calmly. I am the supervisor. Mercer signals. Detain her. Keene twists Carter's arm, pain lancing her shoulder. Stop resisting, he yells. She isn't resisting. She prepares a clean audio record. I'm not resisting, Carter says, voice clear for any audio record. I am complying under protest. Mercer is inches away. You don't tell us how to do our jobs. She spots Keene's body cam. The red light blinks off. Your camera seems to have malfunctioned, Officer Keene, she notes. Mind your business. His grip tightens. Training whispers through her muscles. She could end this in seconds. Not tonight. Not this mission. I'll be filing a formal complaint, she says instead. Mercer laughs. Councilman Pierce oversees this checkpoint. Your complaint goes where he wants. Her watch vibrates softly. Evidence gathering continues. Search the car, Mercer orders another officer. Sir, without a warrant, we have checkpoint authority under City Ordinance 27-9, he interrupts. Carter knows it well. Its flaws, its architect. Anything? Mercer calls. Clean, sir. He frowns. Under the seats. These Westfield folks always hiding something. Carter's thumb taps her watch, activating the GPS beacon. Now the Pentagon tracks her in real time. Nothing, sir, the officer answers. Mercer turns back. Annoyed, shifting to strategy. You're still interfering with a lawful checkpoint, he says. That's obstruction. Invoking constitutional protections isn't obstruction, she answers evenly. The cuffs pinch too tight, deliberate. Veronica Carter, you're under arrest for obstruction and resisting a lawful checkpoint inspection, Mercer recites, savoring each syllable. A young woman in a nearby sedan is still recording, as if breathing through fear. Their eyes meet. Carter gives the slightest nod. You have the right to remain silent, Mercer continues. I'm aware of my Miranda rights, Captain, she interrupts. You're transporting me to Greenfield Station. He hesitates, thrown by her composure. That's right. I'll need my phone call there. You'll get what we decide, Keene says, shoving her toward the cruiser. As they lead her away, Carter watches Doyle redirect another Westfield Heights driver for additional screening. 3 cars piloted by white drivers glide through unchecked. Pattern established. Evidence accumulating. Keene shoves her head down, forcing her into the back seat. Officer Keene, badge number 4572, she says for the record. That force was unnecessary. Shut up, Keene snaps, slamming the door. Through the window, Carter sees Mercer laughing with another officer, gesturing toward Westfield Heights like a punchline. The cruiser pulls away. Carter sits quietly, rehearsing the protocol she activated. Everything is proceeding on schedule. Interrogation smells like coffee gone stale and mop water. One light overhead throws harsh shadows across the bolted table. Carter sits straight in the unforgiving chair, cuffs still cinched tight. 2 hours tick by. The door opens. Mercer enters carrying a thin file and her confiscated belongings. He drops them with a thud. Comfortable? The smile doesn't reach his eyes. She says nothing. Silence invites overreach. He opens the file. Veronica Carter, Westfield Heights. No priors, he looks up. First time learning about checkpoint compliance? I'll speak with my attorney, she says. Soon enough, he answers, circling with a predator's patience. I invoke my right to counsel, Carter says, voice level. Mercer ignores it. We've got a problem around here. People who don't respect authority, people who think rules are optional. He leans on the wall, studying her. Checkpoints keep Greenfield safe. Some folks don't like being checked. Those folks usually have something to hide. Carter is still. Resistance training made this easy. His tactics wouldn't rattle a first-year cadet. Nothing to say? Mercer flips through her wallet, pauses at a card, snorts. Marine Corps General, 4 stars. He tosses it back. Cute fake. That credential is authentic, she replies, eyes steady. That credential is authentic, she replies. Sure, Mercer laughs. And I'm Secretary of Defense. His phone buzzes. He glances, nods to himself. Our concerned citizens here, he says, moving to the door. Through thin walls, Carter hears a new voice, authoritative, impatient. Another one from that neighborhood, the newcomer says. Councilman Pierce, undoubtedly. Yes, sir, Mercer replies. Gave us the Constitution lecture. Had a fake military ID, too. What branch? Marines. Claims to be a general, Mercer adds, laughter bleeding through the drywall. Carter memorizes cadence, emphasis, admissions. Every word is evidence. Mercer returns with keen. Let's try again. He slaps a confession on the table. Sign. Plead to obstruction. You'll be out by morning. Carter studies the document, fingers still. I want my attorney present before I touch anything. Keen steps closer. The captain asked nicely. And I declined respectfully. Keen stations himself behind her, meant to loom. You people from Westfield Heights think you're special, Mercer says. The councilman's program cut crime in Greenfield 30%. By targeting specific neighborhoods? Carter asks. Mercer's smile turns thin. By enforcing the law where it needs enforcing. Selectivity by another name. This interview is over until counsel arrives, Carter says, unblinking. Mercer gathers her belongings, purposely letting her military ID fall. He steps on it while circling the table. This costume doesn't impress me, he sneers, lifting the card again. 4 stars. Ambitious forgery. He tosses it back down. Keen presses harder into her shoulders. We've got all night, Mercer says. Plenty of time for you to reconsider that signature. A sharp knock. The door swings open. Detective Ethan Rivera stands there, professional expression shifting to alert as he reads the room. Captain, Rivera says, a word outside. Mercer hesitates, then nods to Keen. Watch her. The door closes. Urgent whispers ripple through the hallway. Another knock, harder. The door opens again. Rivera enters first. Mercer just behind him, tight-jawed. Rivera carries himself differently. Observant, squared without theatrical bravado, badge on a chain, suit that actually fits. Officer Keen, they need you at the front desk, Rivera says. Keen looks to Mercer, who grudgingly nods. Keen leaves, sealing the room behind him. Rivera picks up the ID, turns it under the light. Captain, this has microprinting, holographic seals, UV watermarks. It's real. It's a good fake, Mercer says. No, sir, Rivera replies. I served before the department. This is genuine. Mercer's confidence thins. Then she stole it. At it, Carter watches the dynamic. Rivera is something rare here. Integrity holding ground inside a corrupted system. Ma'am, Rivera says, addressing Carter with careful respect. Your name and rank? General Veronica Carter, United States Marine Corps. Rivera straightens instinctively. Bering recognizes Bering. What brings you to Greenfield, Hang? He asks. Mercer cuts in. Irrelevant. She's being processed for obstruction and checkpoint evasion. The occupation suddenly matters very much. I'm handling this, Mercer growls. Captain, Rivera answers evenly. Department policy requires verification of military credentials. Section 14 spells it out. I know the manual. Then you know we're already off script. No attorney after request. Questioning continued after invocation. Prolonged detention without proper processing. Mercer closes distance. Detective, remember your place. My place is making sure procedures are followed, Rivera says. He looks again at the stars on the card and actually sees them. He breathes and recalibrates. Sir, these are 4 stars. There are only a handful serving silent shift shape. The interrogation door swings wide again. Councilman Pierce enters without knocking. Tailored suit, signature ring, and the smug weight of power. Captain, why the delay? He asks. I expected routine processing. His eyes land on Carter, calculating. Councilman, Rivera says, we may have detained a high-ranking military officer. We need to verify through channels, Pierce scoffs. Based on what? Security features consistent with a Marine Corps general, Rivera replies. Verification is simple. Your concern is noted, Pierce says. Let the captain handle this. Rivera doesn't move. Principals are hard to outsource. Captain, Pierce says, turning, finish the paperwork and process her. Detective Rivera, you're needed elsewhere. Sir, Rivera pushes, standard protocol is what I say, Pierce interrupts. The checkpoint program operates under a special ordinance. My ordinance, Carter studies Rivera. She sees the conflict, ethics versus orders. Councilman, Rivera says carefully, may I at least verify her identity through military channels? One phone call. Pierce studies him like a puzzle missing edges. You're new here, aren't you? Transferred 6 months ago, Rivera answers. Then learn how we maintain order. By violating rights? Rivera asks. Pierce's smile cools. By maintaining order. Don't overcomplicate your assignment, detective. The phone on the wall rings. All 3 look at it. Mercer answers. Captain Mercer. He listens, frowns. What kind of call? From where? His face pales. He hangs up. Well? Pierce demands. Front desk is getting calls about a General Carter, Mercer says slowly. From who? The Pentagon. The room stills. Probably her friend screwing around, Pierce says. Mercer swallows. They knew her name, her rank. They asked why she was here? Calculation replaces bravado. Rivera sees it too, the moment Mercer's certainty buckles. Sir, Rivera says quietly, you realize who we might have arrested? Pierce silences him with a small gesture. Captain, verify this properly now. Mercer bolts. Pierce studies Carter, recalculating. If you are military, he says, smoothing his voice, you understand the importance of security checkpoints. I understand constitutional rights, Carter answers, and I understand selective enforcement. Pierce's political smile returns. Surely we can clear this up amicably. Carter doesn't bother replying. The wall phone rings again, insistent as consequence. Mercer returns, rattled. That was Colonel Whitaker with the military police. They've confirmed her identity. Excellent, Pierce recovers quickly. Release the general with our apologies for the misunderstanding. Mercer swallows. There's more. They're sending representatives here. Pierce's veneer slips. What representatives? A military investigative unit, Mercer says. They specifically mentioned your checkpoint program, sir. Pierce looks at Carter, the realization dawning that tonight wasn't an accident. It was gravity showing up. Carter meets his stare. Nothing else needs saying. Pierce moves to the door and closes it, as if the wood can hold back what's coming. What exactly is happening? He asks. Carter doesn't answer. Her mission never required a confession. Mercer's radio crackles. Captain, multiple incoming calls. Pentagon, Department of Justice, Governor's Office. Handle it, Pierce snaps. Sir, Mercer answers. They're specifically asking about General Carter. Rivera understands before Pierce does. He steps closer to Carter. Would you like the cuffs removed, General? Pierce glares. Detective, stand down. Rivera doesn't. She's been verified. He removes them anyway. This isn't a game, Councilman, Carter says. It's an investigation. Into what? Pierce laughs, but worry knifes his voice. Systemic civil rights violations through discriminatory checkpoints, she replies, targeting minority neighborhoods, violating Fourth Amendment protections. Quotas by race and district. Pierce's face hardens. Absurd allegations. Documented allegations, Carter answers. Mercer's radio crackles again. Captain, military vehicles entering the lot. Pierce pivots to logistics, like logistics can save him. Release her now, he orders Mercer. Blame the officers. Miscommunication, Mercer hesitates. Keene followed your protocol. Rivera steps forward, fishes a small key from his pocket, and unlocks Carter's cuffs. My apologies, General, he says, formal and sincere. Pierce watches, alarm widening his eyes. Detective, Pierce says tightly, prepare the paperwork for her immediate release. Rivera nods, but doesn't move. Now, Detective. In a moment, Rivera replies. He turns to Carter. General, what happens next? Carter rubs the indentations wringing her wrists. Next, justice, she says. Pierce laughs thinly. A misunderstanding doesn't require theatrics. 6 months of violations isn't a misunderstanding, she replies. The Pentagon has been monitoring Greenfield's checkpoint program since it launched, Carter says, collecting evidence, building a case. She checks her watch. And now that the case is complete, Mercer's radio crackles again. Captain, 3 black SUVs just pulled in. Military personnel disembarking. Pierce heads for the door. I need to make calls. Your calls won't help, Carter says. This investigation has federal oversight. Pierce's hand freezes on the knob. The political mask slips. Rivera moves closer and lowers his voice. He slides a small USB drive across the table. Internal Affairs tried. Doors kept closing. Evidence of direct obstruction? Carter asks softly. Rivera nods. Everything I could gather, checkpoint locations, arrest demographics, internal messages. The hallway amplifies the thunk of heavy doors. It's time, General, Rivera whispers. The interrogation room door opens once more. A Marine in full dress uniform enters, flanked by 2 MPs, a silver eagle on his shoulders. Colonel Whitaker scans the room, pausing on Carter. General Carter, he says, offering a crisp salute. She rises and returns it. Colonel, she says, thank you for the prompt response. But we must rewind, because the plan began long before the cuffs. At sunset, when orange bled across roofs in Westfield Heights, Carter chose the route that clipped the Greenfield border, where policies rewrite themselves depending on who's driving. She'd logged complaint affidavits, mapped stops by race, traced the ordinance back to Pierce's committee. Tonight was the fulcrum. She wore plain clothes, no ribbons, no stars, just a jacket with a hidden transmitter stitched beneath the lining and a watch set to tell time and truth. At the roadblock, Keene played his part on cue. The flashlight lingered where it always does, on her address, not her expiration date. Additional verification. Smirks with another officer, the captain appearing like a curtain rising. The first order, step out. The second, hands on the hood. She gave them every opportunity to choose procedure, and they kept choosing power. The crowd watched, then got pushed away. Cameras dimmed. She made herself a metronome, every action measured, every refusal documented, every escalation filed in the muscles behind her calm. Greenfield Station was the stage's second act. Mercer thought intimidation filled the room by itself. A bolted table, bad lighting, the thud of a tossed file. He thought her silence was fear. It was bait. She asked for counsel. He pushed past it. He called her credential a costume. She made a note of where his heel fell on her ID. She heard Pierce through paper-thin walls, heard another one from that neighborhood, heard the order to make an example. Keene's body cam conveniently died, which meant the truth needed more eyes. Rivera noticed, not because he was naive, but because he'd worn a different uniform once and knew the look of a real card under a lens. He didn't swagger. He checked. He cited Section 14 and the steps they'd skipped. He asked for a phone call instead of a wink. Pierce tried to smother that with ordnance theater. He didn't know Internal Affairs was already bumping against doors he'd locked from the inside. He didn't know a USB drive would cross this table later. He didn't know whose number Carter had dialed. When the Pentagon operator answered, Carter kept it simple. Authorization, operation name, coordinates, no flourishes. Oversight Delta meant documentation already stacked high. It meant lawyers who slept light. It meant she wasn't the only set of eyes tonight. 43 minutes was plenty. Enough time for Mercer to overplay, for Pierce to step into the room, for Rivera to test where his backbone ended and his badge began. Enough time for the neighbors, still stuck at that checkpoint, to become witnesses later, not just victims. Back in the interrogation room, Pierce thought a smile could close the file. "We can resolve this amicably," he said, the way men say it when they smell liability. Carter laid out the charges the program had earned: discriminatory stops, quota-based sweeps, a city ordinance stretched past constitutional shape. He called them absurd. She said documented. Mercer's radio kept muttering like a conscience he couldn't mute. Vehicles parking, phones lighting, calls from people who could end careers with a sentence. The room adjusted to a new gravity. Rivera reached into his pocket and used a small brass key to free Carter's wrists. Apology offered, not for politeness, but because he understood chains should leave marks only when absolutely necessary. Pierce ordered paperwork, like paperwork could cauterize a wound. Rivera asked what came next. Justice, Carter said, because she preferred nouns over metaphors. Pierce tried to belittle the word. She reminded him 6 months of data wouldn't fit under any rug. 6 months? He asked. She nodded once, and the room quieted. The hallway kept speaking for her. Doors thudded. Radios crackled. Outside, engines idled in disciplined lines. Pierce's hand went to the knob like a reflex. Carter told him federal oversight meant the knob no longer mattered. Rivera slid the USB across the table. A humble rectangle heavy with context. Messages rerouted, reports misplaced, memos rewritten to make inequity sound like efficiency. Administrative obstruction looks tidy until sunlight hits it. She asked Rivera quietly if internal affairs needed cover. He said yes. Colonel Whitaker didn't waste breath. Salute, confirmation, movement. He addressed Carter as general because titles matter when cowards pretend they don't. The MPs behind him weren't there to menace. They were there to witness. Carter nodded once. The clock in her mind clicked down. The first minutes consumed by arrogance. The next spent by politics. The final ones, starting now, reserved for accountability. Pierce stood straighter, smoothing his jacket as if cloth could become armor. Mercer watched the floor. What followed had been practiced in briefings and written in handbooks. Verification completed, custody clarified, a federal inquiry formally opened on site. Carter didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She asked for the chain of custody on her belongings, for a record of who touched her ID, for Keene's incident report, for surveillance timestamps showing when his body camera blinked out. She listed witnesses by their shoes and jackets, the ones from nearby cars. Rivera took notes like a man building a bridge. "Councilman Pierce," Carter said, "I suspect you'll want counsel present." He swallowed. "This is a misunderstanding," he said again, shrinking the universe to a single word. "Misunderstandings don't usually call from the Pentagon," Rivera replied, not looking up from his notes. Mercer tried to steer the conversation back to calm. "General, if we made errors—" "You made choices," Carter said. "Errors are accidents." Whitaker asked for a private room for interviews. An MP collected the sign-in log. The station kept breathing, louder now. Carter remembered the woman filming at the checkpoint, the furtive angle of the phone, the quick tuck when Doyle barked. "Find her," Carter told Rivera. "Video corroboration matters." Pierce bristled. "We don't need outside footage." "We do," Carter said, "because your officers terminated their own." The MP at the door didn't move, but the shape of the room shifted anyway. Rivera paged the desk, asked for the vehicle plate list from the checkpoint pause, then for the contact number tied to the plate. "General," Whitaker said, "we'll need a full statement." You'll have it, Carter replied. She recounted the stop in clean lines, the approach, the emphasis on her address, the escalation to enhanced search, her explicit refusal, the camera light dying, the invocation of counsel, the continued questioning. Rivera added his own observations, security features on the ID, Section 14 obligations, deviations from protocol. Mercer stayed quiet, counting backward to decisions he could no longer unmake. Outside, tires whispered. The booking clerk peered in, pale around the mouth. Sir, the governor's office is holding on line 2. Pierce didn't take the call immediately, which told Carter everything. Power never likes picking up when the caller outranks it. Whitaker nodded towards the hall. We'll need space to interview personnel, he said. The MP at the door stepped aside. Rivera asked softly, General, do you want medical attention for your wrists? Photographs first, Carter said. He nodded and signaled for a camera. Documentation breathes. Mercer stood there seeing them, the marks, the camera, the colonel, and began bargaining with himself. Carter watched the bargaining like she'd seen it 100 times, the if-onlys stacking up. If only the flashlight hadn't lingered. If only the line about "you're kind" had stayed inside his teeth. If only he'd read the ID, really read it. If only he'd remembered the manual wasn't optional. Pierce finally grabbed the phone. Yes, Governor. Of course, he said, making agreement noises without committing to nouns. Rivera's page got an answer. The young woman from the checkpoint, name Alina Park, was willing to share footage. She'd seen enough to know truth doesn't survive when it travels alone. An officer escorted her to a conference room. Carter requested that Rivera take that interview personally. Pierce objected out of habit, then realized every objection now sounded like obstruction. Whitaker detailed one MP to accompany Rivera. Another MP began collecting officers' body cams for a forensic review. Procedure finally walked upright. Carter asked for the printed ordinance 27-9 and the city attorney's memos about its scope. Someone fetched a binder, thick with rationalizations tied up as public safety. She skimmed it and then pointed at sections where discretion became a funnel. These phrases invite profiling, she said. This subsection pretends neutrality while measuring compliance by neighborhood. Rivera underlined. Mercer said nothing. Pierce tried a different tack. General, surely you see checkpoints have value. Not like this, she said. The station's front desk phones kept a steady staccato. A sergeant popped in. Colonel, media are gathering outside. Pierce winced. Keep them back. We can't muzzle public sidewalks, the sergeant said. Whitaker asked for a secondary entrance to avoid a scene. We'll brief later, he said, which meant there would be a record, not a rumor. Carter requested that Rivera secure the evidence bag containing her wallet, keys and phone, documenting the chain of custody. He did. She pressed her palms flat and breathed once. Keene finally appeared in the doorway, flushed out of breath. He froze at the uniforms. Officer Keene, Whitaker said, please step in. Keene's eyes flitted to Mercer, then to Pierce, then to Carter, who watched him without blinking. Where's your body camera? Whitaker asked. Battery died, Keene said too quickly. At what time? Silence reached out and touched his throat. I don't recall. We'll pull the logs, Rivera said. Keene stared at the floor. General Carter alleges unnecessary force during transport, Whitaker added. Keene swallowed. We'll examine the transport video, Whitaker said. Mercer tried to deflect. Colonel, with respect, our department is already stretched. Then you should welcome clarity, Whitaker said. Pierce cut in. Captain Mercer has my full confidence. That's noted, Whitaker replied, tone flat as paperwork. Rivera asked Keene, did Captain Mercer instruct officers to prohibit recording at the checkpoint? Keene looked at Pierce before answering, which answered everything. Drivers were instructed to lower phones, he said. So yes. Carter leaned forward. You understood public recording of officers is protected, correct? Keen's jaw worked. We needed control. Control doesn't outrank the Constitution, she said, especially when control is exercised selectively. Pierce's temper flashed. General, you're not here to lecture my department. I'm here because your department detained me after I invoked counsel, Carter said. You'd be surprised how many lectures stop writing themselves once that sentence exists. Rivera requested stop data by neighborhood. A clerk hurried. A tech brought it within minutes. The numbers did what numbers do. They spoke. Westfield Heights residents were stopped at rates that made neutrality a joke. Greenfield drivers glided. This alone doesn't prove intent, Pierce said. It proves effect, Carter answered. And intent has a way of introducing itself once it realizes effect isn't leaving. Mercer rubbed his temples. Rivera asked for names of the supervising officers present, including Doyle. A dispatcher reported that Doyle was still at the checkpoint, closing it down. Have him return, Whitaker said. Alina Park's footage arrived by email. Rivera mirrored it to a screen. The audio wasn't perfect, but the images were. You could see Mercer gesturing to clear the line once phones appeared. You could see Doyle approach vehicles with his hand out, palm a stop sign for cameras. You could hear Keen's voice telling Carter to stop resisting while her body stayed still, shoulders yanked up by someone else's hands. This looks bad, Mercer said hoarsely. It looks accurate, Rivera replied. Accuracy is the point. The governor's office called again, this time asking for names and percentages. Pierce stalled, then realized stalling had expired. We're cooperating fully, he said into the receiver, as Whitaker drafted a written notice of investigation. Carter signed her statement. Rivera added a notation that she'd requested counsel at 7:41 p.m. and again at 8:03 p.m., both ignored. Keen signed a chain of custody form with a shaking hand. Mercer stared at his reflection in the one-way glass, trying to recognize the man looking back. Councilman, Whitaker said, you'll need to remain available for an interview under oath. We'll coordinate with the U.S. Attorney. Pierce nodded stiffly. Anything else? Yes, Carter said. Your Ordinance 27-9 will be reviewed for constitutional compliance. Expect a federal recommendation. Pierce tried for offense. The city's crime rate dropped 30%. Cite your sources, Carter said, preferably those not authored by your office. Rivera slid across a form acknowledging receipt of notice. Pierce signed like his pen had gained weight. Whitaker turned to Mercer. Captain, compile all checkpoint directives issued in the last 6 months, including emails and texts. Mercer nodded, throat dry. Rivera requested the shift roster. Keen said nothing. Doyle's unit crackled over the radio. Checkpoint cleared. Rivera keyed the mic. Officer Doyle, return to the station. Copy, Doyle answered, voice unreadable. Carter asked the booking clerk to print the log entries since her arrival. Ink dried on the page like a timeline deciding it wanted to be a map. The first reporter shouted from the sidewalk when the doors swung open for a patrolman. Is it true a Marine general was arrested here tonight? Pierce flinched, then pretended not to hear. Whitaker arranged a brief statement. An ongoing investigation, no further comment. Carter didn't mind silence. It kept the story from turning into theater too soon. Rivera returned from the conference room. Alina Park will provide an affidavit, he said. She's also identified 2 other drivers who recorded. Pierce blinked. Witnesses multiply when fear recedes. Carter thought of Westfield Heights, of parents explaining to teenagers why courtesy hadn't protected them last month or the month before. She pictured block meetings with coffee in church basements, the way grief turns into planning, because it has to. She didn't need to say any of that here. She wrote it instead, 2 sentences in her statement about effect. Fear routes lives, reroutes futures, until a map looks like a cage. Rivera read them, added a line, fear isn't random. Pierce stared at his shoes. Doyle arrived, knuckles raw from winter air, despite the season pretending otherwise. He clocked the uniforms, the MPs, the colonel's ribbons. "Officer Doyle," Rivera said, "did you instruct motorists to put phones away?" Doyle's eyes moved, a flinch without flight. "I told them recording was interfering." "On whose order?" "Command staff," he said, eyes brushing Mercer like a question. "Did you document the directive?" Rivera asked. Doyle shook his head. "Verbal." "We'll need a written summary," Rivera said. "Names." Times Doyle nodded once. Pierce tried one last time to frame the narrative. "General, surely you agree order must be maintained." Carter didn't bother with sentiment. "Order exists to protect rights, not smother them. When it flips, it stops being order keen." "Quieter now," said. "We were told Westfield residents were running guns." "By whom?" Rivera asked. Keene hesitated. "Briefings." "Produce them," Whitaker said. "If none exist, note that." Keene's mouth opened and closed. Mercer stared at the floor. Carter watched Pierce feel the room change. Rivera's phone buzzed with a message from Internal Affairs. Prior complaints about the checkpoint had been referred back to command and died there. He showed Whitaker, who simply nodded, as if cataloging the predictable. Carter asked for a copy of Pierce's initial sponsorship memo for the ordinance. It arrived. Lots of language about perception of safety. Very little about probable cause. Rivera highlighted 2 lines that translated to quotas without using the word. "That won't age well," he said, writing. Carter requested to call counsel now that the immediate fire had cooled. Whitaker handed her a secure line. She spoke briefly, flagged jurisdictional issues, asked for a civil rights team to contact community leaders before rumors outran facts. She ended the call and turned back to Rivera. "Document everything. Names, times, who stood where he nodded, already doing it." The station felt different now, like a building after an earthquake. Same walls, new angles. In the bullpen, a television flickered, volume low. Pierce's aide slipped in, cheeks flushed. "Sir, reporters want to comment." He whispered something else Pierce didn't want to hear. Pierce dismissed him with a flick, then tried addressing Carter again. "General, if the program needs adjustments, we can form a task force." "The program needs accountability," she said, "then dismantling." Mercer looked up, startled by the word. Rivera kept writing. Whitaker spoke quietly to an MP who left to secure the evidence lockers. Keene shifted weight like a man learning gravity. Rivera printed 2 copies of Alina Park's statement and flagged corroborating timestamps between her video and the station logs. "Synchronization matters," he said, mostly to himself. Carter signed a property receipt for her belongings, each item photographed and tagged. She asked for the evidence bag to remain sealed pending review. Mercer agreed, because refusing would require a kind of courage he didn't have left. Pierce's phone rang again. He let it vibrate out, then exhaled through his nose. The young clerk who'd taken Carter's prints earlier poked his head in. "General, do you need water?" Carter smiled, small and real. "Yes, thank you." The kid returned with a bottle and a look like his world had moved an inch. She drank and set it aside, the plastic creasing under her fingers. Rivera finished his notes and closed his pen with a click that sounded like intention. "General," he said, "Internal Affairs will want formal interviews tomorrow." "I'll be here," she said. Pierce watched the door. Whitaker checked his watch. "We'll begin formal advisements now." An MP read rights to Mercer, to Keene, to Doyle, to the booking clerk, because process doesn't discriminate when it's allowed to work. Carter stood, feeling circulation return in warm needles where the cuffs had been. She remembered the moment at the roadside when she could have fought, and chose not to, because strategy wins longer than strength. She looked through the glass. Beyond the lobby, cameras flashed. Umbrellas bobbed in the light rain. Rivera's phone buzzed again. "2 more drivers just emailed footage," he said. "Both show white motorists waved through." "Save and duplicate," Whitaker said. "Chain them." Carter glanced at Pierce. "Councilman, Those are the people you serve. He lifted his chin. I serve the whole city. Then you'll be relieved to learn that means them too. The room didn't need volume to feel loud anymore. It had momentum. Carter picked up her statement packet, added one sentence at the end. Justice isn't loud, it is thorough. A Marine officer in full dress stepped in with 2 MPs. Silver eagles on his shoulders caught the fluorescent glare. Colonel Whitaker assessed the room and settled on Carter. General Carter, he said, voice crisp. He saluted. She rose and returned it. Colonel, she said, thank you for the rapid response. Of course, ma'am, he answered. Procedure cued itself like music. Transfers of custody, interviews scheduled, evidence secured, notifications logged. Outside, camera flashes stitched light across dark pavement like lightning made patient. Inside, Veronica Carter stood very still. Exactly. Whitaker turns to the assembled group. Colonel Adrian Whitaker, Defense Investigations Directorate. These are my colleagues. Pierce steps forward, his politician smile back in place. Councilman Roland Pierce, Greenfield City Council. A regrettable mix-up, Colonel Whitaker cuts in, voice even. Councilman, please remain on site. My team has questions. The smile frays. Questions? I had no knowledge of the general's detention. Noted, Whitaker says flat. He faces Mercer. Captain, secure this room for the general. We'll need your main conference room. Mercer hesitates. Colonel, this is a police station, and I have direct authorization from the Secretary of Defense, Whitaker says, ending the debate. Your cooperation isn't optional. Activity surges. Uniformed investigators roll in cases, string cables, image drives. A digital forensics unit ghosts through workstations. Evidence techs photograph, tag, and seal. Carter reads the room like a battle map. Vectors, choke points, escape routes. Pierce watches the tempo spike, alarm climbing behind his eyes. This seemed excessive for a minor detention, he says. Carter stands, smoothing her plain jacket. This isn't about my cuffs, Councilman. It's about what my cuffs revealed. She turns to Whitaker. Status. Teams deployed as ordered, General, he replies. Evidence preservation in effect. Governor's liaison on a secure line, Pierce drifts toward the hall. 2 MPs step into his path, polite but immovable. Outrageous, he huffs. I have rights. Exactly, Carter says. So does everyone you routed through your checkpoints. She and Whitaker move toward the now converted conference room. Monitors glow to life. Maps, charts, timelines. Rivera enters with a box of files. General, requested internal documents. Thank you, Detective, Dick Carter says. Your diligence matters. Mercer, Keene, and Pierce are seated apart like magnets refused alignment. Carter takes the head of the table. Conversation evaporates. 6 months ago, the Pentagon received repeated complaints alleging your checkpoint program targeted minority neighborhoods, she begins. Initial review flagged probable Fourth Amendment violations. Deeper digging surfaced something worse. She taps a control. A citywide map blooms in reds and yellows. Checkpoint placement and arrest density, she narrates. Red constellations burn over Westfield Heights and adjacent corridors. Selective enforcement, Carter says. Stop and search rate for Westfield residents, 89%. Arrest conversion from those stops, 94%. Mercer shifts. Crime stats justified deployment. Your own traffic study disproves that, Carter says, switching to a slide. Equal violation rates across demographics. Disparate enforcement only at your checkpoints. Another click. Email headers march across the screens. Captain Mercer, she reads, your message dated March 12th. Prioritize vehicles from Westfield Heights. Higher arrest yield. Color drains from Mercer's face. Context. Context, Carter echoes, dropping a second doc. Arrest targets by district, tied to Westfield residency. Pierce interjects, palms up. Operational details were the department's lane. I approve the concept, only Carter tilts her head. Is that so? She nods to Whitaker. A directive fills the display. Detailed operating procedures. Signature line unmistakable. Your signature, councilman, Whitaker says. This language instructs targeting by neighborhood, a proxy for race. Pierce's facade cracks. This is a witch hunt. This is accountability, Carter answers. She gestures to Rivera. Detective, your findings. Rivera steps forward, weariness undercut by resolve. I identified skewed arrest patterns within weeks, he says. Raising concerns led to reassignment. I kept documenting. Officers were told to apply different standards based on residents' Mercer bristles. Not true, Carter hits play. A briefing clip rolls. Mercer's voice plays across tinny speakers. Remember, Westfield plates get the full treatment. Make the stop stick silence lands hard. Pierce jolts to his feet. I need my attorney. You'll have that opportunity, Carter says calmly, sliding a folder toward Mercer. These are only the last 6 months. His hands tremble as he opens it. The investigation deepens. Evidence techs image servers. Legal advisors catalog policy breaches. Forensics bag body cams. In a corner, Carter finds Rivera, leafing through notes. Detective, she says, voice softening. Your spine kept this from vanishing. He exhales. I should have done more earlier. You did what you could inside a rigged machine, Carter replies. That's courage, not failure. Rivera closes a file. When I transferred here, the checkpoint program was pitched as innovative community policing. I wanted to believe it, Carter asks. When did the story break for you? Rivera hesitates, a flash of grief cutting his practiced calm. 3 months ago, he says, my older brother visited. He was stopped, detained for hours, never charged, just punished. His only offense was being a black man in the wrong zip code. Carter nods once. We'll make that right. Why send you? Rivera asks quietly. Why a 4-star for a local mess? Because some messes threaten more than a city budget, Carter says. Civil rights violations corrode trust, invite instability, and undermine the Constitution we swear to defend. Rivera absorbs it. What happens to them? To Pierce? To the officers? Due process, Carter says. The rights they denied others. And for those harmed? Case reviews, expungements, compensation. She meets his eyes. Your brother's file goes in first wave. Rivera blinks hard, swallows. This isn't just about tonight, is it? It never was, Carter answers. What's our next step? Rivera asks, shoulders setting. Consolidate evidence, Carter says. Your testimony will matter to a federal grand jury. I'm ready, he answers. The sky fades from black to bruise outside Greenfield Station. Government sedans fill rows. FBI agents shake hands with defense investigators. DOJ attorneys uncap pens and park at laptops inside the mood inches from inquiry toward prosecution. Boards fill with timelines. Screens tile data. Mercer sits apart from his squad. Pierce's lawyer whispers counsel. He refuses to hear. Whitaker enters with a new team and a short nod. General, he says, the Secretary of Defense sends regards. We're now a joint task force. Carter nods. Good. Full briefing. Senior officials assemble. State, federal, military. 1. The governor's representative takes a seat near the Deputy Attorney General. Carter steps forward, posture relaxed but in command. What began as monitoring escalated into a pattern of constitutional abuse. She begins. Today we'll move through 3 buckets of proof: visual, audio, and written. The main display wakes. First, visual. Dashcam footage fills the wall. A Westfield Heights professional. Polite, ordered out without cause, car searched without consent, then arrested for obstruction. This pattern repeats across hundreds of stops, Carter narrates. Split screen. White motorists wave through with a nod. Black and motorists from Westfield detained, searched, cuffed. Department cameras captured the disparity themselves, she says. White drivers stopped 8% of the time. Black drivers, 82%. Pierce sputters, selective editing can fake patterns. These are your recordings, unaltered, Carter replies. Timestamps intact. A heat map glows. Checkpoints placed to intercept residents leaving Westfield Heights. Mercer shifts again. Strategic deployment based on traffic. Contradicted by your consultants, Carter says, flashing the ignored study that recommended different sites entirely. Second, audio, Carter continues. A clip crackles. Mercer's voice. Councilman wants more arrests from Westfield. Make it happen, Keene chimes in. Even without cause, Mercer. Find cause. Broken taillight, failure to signal. Get them out. You'll find something. Pierce stands. That could be anyone. Voice analysis confirms Mercer and Keene, Carter says, recorded during official briefings. Another clip. Pierce's voice, smooth and certain. Public safety is what we sell. Property values are why we do it. Keep the element in Westfield, not in our neighborhoods. Pierce sinks, jaw clenched. Carter's watch gleams. My encrypted watch captured last night's interactions, she explains, including candid remarks you assumed I couldn't hear. Murmurs ripple as federal officials trade looks. Finally, documents. Emails, texts, memos waterfall across screens. Mercer to squad. Quota system as discussed, numbers up in the Westfield demographic. Department stats follow. Arrest rates by race, search rates by neighborhood, conviction outcomes by group. Black drivers faced arrest at 7 times the rate of white drivers for identical violations, Carter says, placing 2 arrest reports side by side. Same infraction, different race, different result. The origin tells the clearest story. City planning slides appear beside developer emails and ledger entries. Councilman Pierce accepted substantial contributions from developers eyeing revitalization of Westfield Heights, Carter says. The strategy demanded displacement. Checkpoint harassment depressed values. Purchases followed at reduced prices. Civil rights violations laundered as economics Pierce's counsel leans in, whispering urgent instructions. Pierce waves him off. Lies, Pierce says. Politics. The receipts disagree, Carter answers. She nods to Rivera. He slots a small drive into the system. Detective Rivera documented the machine from inside, she tells the room. Rivera faces the group, voice steady. I collected evidence of neighborhood-based quotas, recorded directions to sidestep constitutional limits, he says. The displays show performance reviews tied to Westfield arrest counts, checkpoint rosters aligning with Black churches' service times, community centers, local businesses. Most damning, Rivera continues, complaints were buried, forms labeled resolved, without investigation. Witness statements altered, video deleted. He advances to a matrix of case outcomes. The system protected itself. Silence deepens as officials move closer to the screens. Carter speaks into it. This was never about me. I volunteered to test the machine after months of intelligence gathering, she says. The outcome tracked our predictions exactly. She turns to Pierce. Your program violated the Fourth Amendment, targeted citizens by race, and obstructed justice when challenged. A DOJ lawyer rises. We've seen enough to support federal civil rights charges. Pierce flails for footing. This is a misunderstanding. The program served legitimate safety goals, Carter answers evenly. The evidence rejects that story. Pierce grasps at one last defense. You provoked this entrapment. I drove through a public checkpoint, Carter says. My rights were violated, like hundreds of others. She lifts a final document. This is the defense authorization, signed by the secretary, she says. It launched after multiple service members reported discriminatory treatment at your checkpoints. The realization finally lands in Pierce's eyes. He turns to his lawyer, panic-cracking composure. Carter closes the sequence. The investigation phase is complete. Federal prosecutors will determine charges. An analyst plugs in a final laptop. Evidence reaches back 3 years. FBI agents step toward Mercer, Keene, and several others. DOJ attorneys approach Pierce. The lead prosecutor speaks, calm as a gavel. Councilman Roland Pierce, you are under federal investigation for civil rights violations, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. Chairs scrape. Pierce lurches upright. I need a press statement. I'll control the narrative. He pivots toward a side exit. 2 MPs already wait, the door that opened easily for him yesterday. doesn't recognize him today. 1 week later, Capitol Hill swallows camera crews and staffers. A hearing room fills, members, aides, press, rows of citizens who rode those checkpoints. General Veronica Carter sits at the witness table in full dress blues, 4 stars steady under white light. The chair wraps the dais. This hearing on civil rights enforcement in local policing will come to order, the chair says. General Carter, thank you for appearing. Carter leans into the mic. Thank you for the opportunity. Summarize the investigation, the chair requests. Carter begins. 6 months ago, DoD received complaints from service members detained at Greenfield checkpoints. Preliminary review identified apparent constitutional violations targeting minority neighborhoods. She advances slides, the placements, the disparities, the financial motives braided through policy. Our investigation confirmed systemic Fourth Amendment breaches, she says. Citizens were detained, searched, and arrested without probable cause. A member interjects, why Pentagon, not solely justice? The initial complainants wore uniforms, Carter answers. We then coordinated with DOJ when civilian impacts mirrored the same pattern. A map returns to the screen, isolating Westfield Heights in a web of roadblocks. Residents faced harassment commuting to work, school, the grocery store, she says. Arrest stats stacked beside conviction rates, the curves refusing to overlap. Most troubling, Carter continues, is that the program operated with explicit city authorization. Councilman Pierce personally directed targeting by demographic. Another member leans forward. Status of those involved? Carter doesn't pause. Councilman Pierce faces federal civil rights charges, she says. Captain Mercer and 5 officers have been indicted. The checkpoint program is permanently dismantled. All convictions arising from unconstitutional stops are under review for expungement. The chair nods. General, your choice to personally test the checkpoints was unconventional. Why? Carter doesn't blink. Systems reveal themselves under pressure. As a black woman and a senior officer, I could document the gap between policy and practice in a way that couldn't be waved away. A supportive member speaks. Detective Ethan Rivera's internal work was pivotal. Detective Rivera, the member says, please stand. Rivera rises from the gallery, applause rolling through the room. Carter acknowledges him. His integrity represents the best of policing, she says. The chair's tone firms. Recommendations to prevent repetition? Carter lists them. Independent oversight for any checkpoint operation. Mandatory stop data by demographic. Consequences for departments showing discriminatory patterns. She looks each member in the eye. Constitutional rights are not elective. They don't depend on zip code or balance sheet. Questions continue. Carter answers precisely, always orbiting equal protection like true north. When the session ends, the chair announces new legislation. The Equitable Enforcement Act, federal standards for checkpoint operations, transparency, accountability, constitutional compliance outside. Carter meets Rivera. The committee was impressed, she says. The Bureau's Civil Rights Division offered me a slot, Rivera replies, a tired smile breaking free. I accepted. Sometimes you fix the system by moving inside it. Your brother, Carter asks. Record expunged, Rivera says. He's helping organize the class action for checkpoint victims. Carter nods. Justice is slow, she says, but persistence is faster than silence. 2 months later, a Westfield Heights community center hums with voices. Residents pack folding chairs for a town hall with the new police chief. Carter, in civilian clothes, sits in the back listening. Rivera, no longer a detective, now a community liaison, facilitates. The chief rolls out reforms, camera activation without exception, public stop data dashboards, a civilian oversight board with teeth. Afterward, an older woman approaches Carter. You're the general, right? The one who helped end the checkpoints. Carter smiles. I helped surface the truth. You did more, the woman says, eyes brightening. Back in the Hill hearing, Carter cues more visuals. Split screens stack across the wall, quick wave-throughs for white motorists, prolonged holds for black drivers leaving Westfield Heights, Side captions note identical violations, divergent outcomes. Department cameras recorded their own disparities, she says. A lower third displays frequencies. White motorists stopped, 8%. Black motorists, 82A murmur rolls. Pierce leans toward his counsel. Selective clips, he mutters. No, Carter answers. Unaltered files, complete timestamps. Another panel overlays deployment zones with commuting routes. The red net doesn't catch crime, it catches neighborhoods. Pierce tries again, voice edged. Patterns can be manufactured. Carter doesn't blink. So can excuses. She advances to a procurement memo, recommending different checkpoint sites, ignored. Your traffic logic contradicted your own study, she says. A second overlay marks schools, churches, and medical clinics, abutting barricades. Everyday life became a gantlet, she adds. A veteran member asks about false positives. Massive, she replies. Stops without cause built the arrest pipeline. Complaints were rerouted or closed without inquiry. She glances toward Rivera. Internal Affairs found obstacles, not oversight. The chair nods grimly, pen hovering above a page already crowded. Audio, Carter continues. A briefing room recording plays, Mercer stating, Councilman wants numbers from Westfield. Make it happen, Keene. Even without cause. Mercer. Find cause. The waveform scrolls while a spectrographic signature confirms speakers. Voice analysis verified identities, Carter explains. Another file cues. Pierce's tone arrives smooth. Public safety is the message. Property values are the mission. Keep the element in Westfield. A rustle moves through the dais. Carter adds, captured during operational planning, not locker room bravado. She lets silence work, then. Policies don't accidentally echo prejudice. They execute it. Pens resume scratching, quick and purposeful. Documents, she says, pivoting. Emails cascade. Directives calibrating emphasis by neighborhood. Performance reviews pegged to Westfield arrest counts. Reminders to find cause when none appears. Then spreadsheets, arrest rates by race, search rates by district, matching case outcomes. For identical infractions, Carter says, black drivers were arrested 7 times as often. She clicks again. Planning slides from Pierce's office populate beside developer correspondence and donation ledgers. Here's how policy met profit, she narrates. Harassment depressed values. Investors bought low. Residents moved under pressure. The chair's gavel taps lightly. The message lands without theatrics. The receipts speak plainly. The DOJ deputy rises. Based on the record, we're proceeding with civil rights prosecution. She says. Pierce's lawyer whispers furiously. His client stares ahead. A member asks Carter, what safeguards prevent repeats elsewhere? She answers without consulting notes. Independent checkpoint oversight. Mandatory stop data disclosure. Automatic audits when disparities cross thresholds. Personal accountability for command failures. Another member, and remediation? Case reviews, expungements, compensation, Carter repeats. Public trust is security's foundation. Without it, everything shakes. Outside the chamber, cameras strobe. Inside, the transcript accumulates lines that will outlive anyone's spin. After the hearing, Carter steps into a quieter corridor. Rivera joins, tie loosened by miles, not minutes. You held the line, he says. You widened it, she replies. A staffer passes a draft bill, the Equitable Enforcement Act. Carter reads the bullet points, oversight triggers, public dashboards, penalties for noncompliance, and hands it back. Make the guardrails harder to bend, she advises. Rivera nods. IA pinged me. Complaints they filed were reclassified as training issues. Carter grimaces. We'll excavate the paper trail. Systems hide their shame in bureaucratic shadows. We'll bring flashlights, a capital bell tolls. Work, not ceremony, continues. Back in Greenfield, the task force occupies the conference room like a temporary operating theater. Boards chart case clusters. Technicians clone phones. Analysts cross-reference patrol rosters to arrest spikes. Mercer sits apart, counsel murmuring in his ear. Keene keeps glancing at the door, like it might rewrite time. Pierce paces until an MP asks him to sit. Carter reviews expungement protocols with DOJ counsel, insisting on proactive outreach. Clearing records shouldn't require victims to crawl back, she says. We'll publish names, dates, charges, and next steps. Then we'll call outside. The first former defendant arrives, wary and resolute. Carter meets her in a side office. Ms. Lark, thank you for coming. The woman smiles thinly. Didn't think anyone would ever say that to me. An attorney explains vacatur paperwork. A counselor details access to tuition reinstatement. Carter listens more than she speaks. They took my job after that arrest, Lark says. Said I lied on the application. Carter answers carefully. We'll write letters attesting the arrest stemmed from unconstitutional practices. Employers prefer courage once a spotlight's on. Lark nods. Feels like oxygen. Outside, flashbulbs pop. Inside, signatures begin dismantling a machinery that should never have existed. Night returns. The task force keeps its pulse. Whitaker's team inventories, body cams, flagging gaps exactly where citizens' videos record the truth. Rivera compiles a chronology of directives, annotating who said what and when. Carter drafts a memo to state chiefs. Camera deactivation will trigger disciplinary presumptions absent hard proof. Bad batteries don't always die at convenient times, she notes. Pierce rehearses lines to imaginary reporters. His lawyer cautions silence. Mercer stares at his hands, counting mistakes in reverse order. The blink of a camera, a heel on an ID, a sentence he can't unsay. Dawn scrapes light over the station again. Carter reviews a draft consent decree, data transparency, independent monitors, training redesign, consequences that bite. Weak medicine won't cure structural disease, she says. Whitaker highlights enforcement teeth, funding triggers, personnel audits. A DOJ attorney adds community oversight board authority. Real subpoena power, Carter insists. No advisory theater. Rivera texts, Alina Park's footage authenticated. Timestamps align with dispatch logs. Carter replies with a simple checkmark. Progress sounds like quiet keystrokes and the occasional decisive stapler thunk. Pierce's arraignment draws a crowd under a slate sky. He steps from a black sedan into a corridor of mics he once commanded. The charges are read in a courtroom that smells like wood polish, and consequence. Civil rights violations, abuse of power, obstruction. He pleads not guilty, jaw set. Outside, Carter declines questions. The filings speak, she says. She walks past a hand-lettered sign. We believe our eyes. Rivera stands with the former defendants, not as props, but as plaintiffs in waiting. Accountability dresses differently than PR. It doesn't need a podium. Weeks pass. Westfield Heights feels lighter. The road where the checkpoint stood now carries commuters, kids on bikes, a florist's van. Carter visits between meetings, talking with shop owners about restitution forms and ceiling clinics. A barber says, business came back when fear left. She nods. That's a metric no dashboard needs. She meets a pastor organizing legal aid nights and a teacher helping seniors navigate expungements. Systems fall slowly, she knows, but confidence can grow faster when people finally see the hinges it's replacing locks. Back at the Pentagon, Carter briefs a cross-agency team in a conference room paneled with maps. We're seeing similar signatures elsewhere, she says, pointing out heat clusters near installations and minority neighborhoods. Whitaker summarizes the alert pipeline. Service members now report civil rights concerns directly through an encrypted channel. Signal to noise improved 60+%, he notes. A DHS liaison asks about municipal resistance. Expect it, Carter answers. Design oversight for friction. She closes with a reminder. All order without justice calcifies into control. Our job is to keep it honest. Heads nod, pens capture the spine of a national playbook. Reporters swarm the courthouse steps where Pierce's counsel announces a combative defense. Inside, a judge denies a motion to suppress the briefing audio. Lawful in origin, material to intent, the ruling reads. Carter doesn't celebrate. Motions are skirmishes, not battles. She walks to a small plaza where a food truck hands out coffee. A young man recognizes her. "My dad's charge is gone," he says quietly. "Thank you." Carter shakes his hand. "Tell him to send me his supervisor's contact." Will backstop reinstatement. Gratitude is not the mission, she reminds herself, but it can be fuel. In a windowless lab, technicians clone the last of the seized phones. Metadata shows clusters of texts coordinating Westfield emphasis nights. Substrings mirror Pierce's language too closely to be coincidence. Rivera flags one thread where a supervisor instructs officers to discourage crosstown traffic after 10. "That's not curfew," Carter says. "That's containment." Whitaker drafts a referral to the state POST commission recommending decertification for 2 repeat offenders. The room has no dramatics, only white light, gloves, and patient professionals doing arithmetic with accountability. Carter takes a call from a state attorney general piloting checkpoint reforms. "Push data to the public portal by default," she advises. "Force the conversation into sunlight. The bad metrics will scream at first, then they'll shrink." He asks about unions. "Engage them early," she says. "Make it about officer safety through legitimacy." No one wants to police a community that thinks it's under siege. She ends the call, makes another. This one to Rivera. "How's your brother?" "Operating again," he says, voice warm. He asked if he can volunteer at expungement clinics. 1 week later, Pierce arrives for a closed-door meeting with federal prosecutors. He emerges pale, lips pressed thin. A reporter shouts, "Are you cooperating?" He stares past cameras. Rumors seed and scatter. Carter doesn't water them. She meets Whitaker at a secure building near the river. 3-year look-back complete, he reports. Patterns extend to periods predating the ordinance. Informal checkpoints, same corridors. "So the ordinance didn't create rot," Carter says. "It gave it a badge." She signs a referral to the U.S. attorney recommending conspiracy charges alongside civil rights counts. The file grows heavier in the hand. Trial prep feels like assembling a cathedral, careful, cumulative, no single stone dramatic until you step back. Carter rehearses testimony with DOJ, trimming adjectives, sharpening verbs. Rivera practices too, sticking to facts and timestamps, leaving moral judgments to the jury's common sense. Mercer's counsel floats a plea. Keene's lawyer asks about cooperation credit. Carter doesn't decide their futures, the truth does. Alina Park sits with prosecutors, resolute. She doesn't want a headline, only a city that stops treating her street like contraband. In court, the evidence arranges itself like a ledger. Visuals, audio, documents. The trilogy returns, now for 12 citizens, seated under an oath that means something. Carter testifies sparingly. "I activated Oversight Delta after months of intelligence," she says. "My detention aligned with predicted patterns." Rivera follows, detailing the paper labyrinth designed to lose complaints. The defense suggests coincidence. The data refuses to blush. When closing arguments end, the room holds its breath. Verdicts take time, but sometimes truth travels faster than anyone expects. Weeks later, on the Capitol steps, Carter exits another oversight session as a crowd of students questions her about checks and balances. She answers plainly, "Write policy like someone will try to exploit it. Because they will, a girl asks how to help. Learn your rights. Teach your friends. Vote in the boring elections," Carter says. A boy adds, "And if they ignore us?" "They won't if you persist," she replies. Persistence isn't a slogan, it's paperwork, meetings, and the unglamorous miracle of showing up again tomorrow. Back at her desk, Carter reads a letter from a Westfield Heights teacher, a scholarship reinstated, a graduation back on schedule. She sets it alongside a darker report from another state, checkpoint complaints spiking, same telltale phrases. She circles the jurisdiction with a pen and writes, "Audit now." Whitaker appears in the doorway. "We've got bandwidth," he says. "We'll take it." Carter nods. Success invites copycats, but vigilance scales when good people share the load. She files the letter under completed remedies. The pile is blessedly thicker. A local paper runs a story on Officer Doyle, now cooperating. He describes verbal orders to shoo cameras and find cause. Public reaction is swift but not cruel. People want truth more than spectacle, Carter thinks. She sends a note to Doyle's attorney, cooperation acknowledged. She adds a second name to her personal list, officers who chose course correction over collapse. Accountability without vindictiveness is hard. Do it anyway, she tells herself. The work should change systems and, when possible, save people from themselves. Rivera's first week at the bureau feels like drinking from a hydrant. He texts Carter a photo of his desk, messy, hopeful. "Welcome to the fight with better printers," she replies. They hop on a secure call about replicating the Greenfield model. Early warning dashboards, complaint triage, whistleblower channels that actually protect. "We'll need translators," Rivera says, "people who can turn numbers into stories the public understands." "You just volunteered," Carter says. He laughs. A new case ping lights up his monitor. Change is a relay. He's already sprinting. In a state house across the country, lawmakers debate the Equitable Enforcement Act's local analog. Opponents warn of red tape. Supporters wave charts showing fewer wrongful arrests where sunlight shines. Carter doesn't testify. Community members do. A teenager describes driving without fear for the first time. A nurse recounts missing a shift during a baseless stop. The bill passes by 3 votes. Progress rarely lands with confetti. It shows up as slightly better Tuesdays. The judge sentences Mercer to a term that includes decertification and community supervision with mandatory civil rights training. Keene receives less time, but more oversight. Pierce's case continues on a separate track, heavier and longer. Outside, Carter declines victory laps. "This isn't a parade," she tells a reporter. "It's plumbing, fixing leaks you hoped no one would ever need to find." She heads to Westfield Heights for an evening meeting about record ceiling fares. People clap. She raises a palm. "Save the applause for the clerks and volunteers," she says. "They're the ones turning policy into air." At a small celebration in a church basement, expungement clinic volunteers pin name tags and sort snacks. Carter thanks them, then takes a seat in the back, letting the night belong to the neighborhood. One young man stands and says his scholarship returned after 2 years lost. An aunt reports her nephew's rideshare account reactivated. These are humble miracles. Paperwork with pulse. Carter pockets a program listing next month's clinics in 2 adjacent cities. Good ideas travel. They should never need permission. A committee member from the Hill calls Carter for plain advice. "Write funding with performance triggers," she says. "Tie grants to demonstrated equity, not promises. Make compliance reports public by default. If departments fear sunlight, audit them first." He chuckles, sobered. "We're getting there." Carter ends the call and looks at her watch. Her calendar is a chessboard. Today's pieces moved well. She knows tomorrow's board will look different, maybe harder. She likes those odds. In Greenfield, the new chief hosts a listening session at a high school auditorium. Banners read, "Trust is a practice." Carter attends quietly as residents outline hopes and scars. The chief repeats a commitment, cameras on, data out, oversight in. Rivera, now wearing a bureau badge, speaks last. "Accountability isn't anti-police," he says. "It's pro-community and pro-constitution." Carter watches the crowd's shoulders lower. Relief makes a specific sound, like a room deciding to exhale together. Another month, another dashboard. Carter reviews national stop data while sipping coffee gone cold. She flags outlier jurisdictions with a yellow marker and writes 3 names on a whiteboard. Liaisons who can open doors. Whitaker drops a folder on her desk. "Service member complaints down 63% since the pipeline opened," he says. "The warning system works." Carter nods. "Good. Scale training to guard against complacency. Success breeds shortcuts. We can't afford any." The room hums with measured purpose, the sound of a machine tuned for fairness rather than fear. A message pings from Rivera. "Bennett's sentencing today." Carter reads the update. 5 years federal. Restitution ordered to checkpoint victims, restrictions on public office. Justice delayed remains justice, imperfect and real. She thinks of the older woman at the community center, the grandson back in college, the barber whose chairs refilled, the surgeon who went back to saving kids. None of them asked for a hero. They asked for a system that noticed when it was hurting them and stopped. Carter's aide ushers in a young Air Force officer, crisp uniform and steady eyes. "Lieutenant Jasmine Williams," the aide says. Williams salutes. "Ma'am, I was detained at a local checkpoint near Maxwell 2 weeks ago." Carter gestures to a chair. "You did right reporting it." Williams hesitates. "I wasn't sure until I read about Greenfield." "Every data point matters," Carter replies. "Patterns begin as dots." Williams nods. "What happens now?" "Now we follow the trail, collect reports, compare outcomes, interview witnesses. If it's a pattern, we'll surface it. If it's a blip, we'll fix it." Carter walks Williams through the intake flow. Every encrypted portal, liaison teams, community partners. "Uniforms don't inoculate us from bias," Carter says. "They do obligate us to defend the Constitution for everyone." Williams straightens. "That's why I filed, not just for me." "Exactly." Carter points at a map glowing on the wall, a national lattice of dots, some fading as reforms stick, others sharpening into calls to action. The work is endless in the best way. It keeps choosing you back as long as you keep choosing it. Later that week, Carter and Whitaker brief a coalition of state AGs and police standards boards. The slide that quiets the room shows a simple before-after: complaints down, trust scores up, crime steady. "Legitimacy doesn't hinder safety," Carter says. "It anchors it." A skeptical chief clears his throat. "And the cost?" "Less than lawsuits, less than turnover, less than broken neighborhoods," she answers. "They don't clap, they take notes. That's better." Applause fades. Notes become policy. Rivera sends a late-night text. "First, I, a whistleblower, used our secure channel tonight, gave names, dates, files." Carter replies, "Respect their courage. Protect them twice." She adds a reminder to tomorrow's agenda: expand whistleblower counseling and legal support. Systems change when insiders trust exits more than silence. She looks at the window's reflection, 4 small stars over a tired face, and allows herself one smile. Then she closes the laptop and lets the room go dark. Saturday morning finds Carter at the Westfield Farmers Market, buying peaches and answering questions she'd rather residents ask their counsel. "How do we keep this from coming back?" a vendor asks. "Stay noisy," she says. "Show up, read reports, ask for raw numbers." Power hates a calendar. She carries her bag past the former checkpoint. The asphalt doesn't remember, but the people do. A kid rides through where cones once stood and doesn't look left for permission. That's the point. On a red-eye to DC, Carter drafts a training module. When a camera goes dark, it outlines presumptions, documentation steps, and discipline ladders. She adds a scenario where forgetting becomes policy in disguise. "If it isn't recorded," the slide reads, "assume the public saw it anyway." She closes her eyes and hears the fluorescent buzz of Greenfield's interrogation room. Memory can bruise. It can also be a compass. She lands with a plan and a list. The Pentagon conference room glows with a national map. Whitaker enters carrying fresh reports. "Implementation moving on schedule," he says. 17 departments voluntarily reformed checkpoint practices. Carter marks them green. "And the holdouts?" 9 jurisdictions under DOJ review," Whitaker answers. Red outlines pulse like warning beacons. The Greenfield model is doing its job, flagging systemic discrimination early. Carter nods. "Keep the signal loud, the process fair." Progress isn't linear. It's a series of decisions that learn from the last one. Carter's secure phone chimes. A text from Rivera. "Bennett sentenced, 5 years. Restitution ordered." She exhales, a private exhale, then answers. "Onward," her aide knocks. "Next appointment," Carter says. "Send her in." A young officer steps through the door, Air Force blues crisp, courage visible. "Lieutenant Williams, welcome." They sit. Carter gestures toward the screens. This is your country, too. Let's make sure the roads feel that way. Williams nods, jaw set with resolve that has nothing to do with rank and everything to do with duty. Williams explains her stop, polite questions answered with suspicion. A supervisor called when she asserted her rights. An hour lost, nothing found. Carter listens, interrupts, only to clarify timing. We'll start with public records and community outreach, she says. If others share your experience, we'll see it. Williams asks what to expect. Noise, then denial, then evidence, Carter says, and eventually change. She offers a wry half smile. The arc doesn't bend, we bend it. Williams returns the smile. The work recruits who it needs. A training day at Quantico brings Carter to a room of federal and local investigators. She teaches Greenfield not as a victory lap, but as a case study in vigilance. Shortcut culture, she warns, masquerades as efficiency. It's rot. She outlines oversight delta, thresholds, triggers, interlocks that catch the small slips before they become policy. A young detective asks, "What if my captain is the problem?" "Document anyway," Carter says. "Truth outlasts rank." Heads dip as pens keep up. That afternoon, Carter reviews a thick envelope of thank you notes from expungement clients. Handwritten, earnest, the kind of mail budgets can't buy. She reads each, then returns to a spreadsheet tracking restitution disbursements. Numbers matter because lives ride inside them. Whitaker pauses at her door. "Take an evening," he suggests. "The map will still be there tomorrow." She promises to try. He knows promises like that are optimistic fictions. He leaves a peach on her desk anyway. Late evening, a quiet hallway. Carter pulls on a coat and passes the map one more time. The United States hums as dots and lines, neighborhoods and nights. She thinks of Alina Park's steady hands, Rivera's USB, Whitaker's salute, the barber's grin, the older woman's relief, the surgeon who went back to saving kids. None of them were props. All of them were why. "No checkpoints," she says under her breath. "No double standards." The lights dim themselves to a patient glow. Tomorrow is already knocking. The next morning, Carter stands beside the window as sunlight paints the courtyard. She briefs Williams on initial findings. 2 more complaints, similar facts, same corridor. "We'll visit," Carter says, quietly. Williams nods. Courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's an appointment on a Tuesday. Carter pockets her badge and leaves the office with a small team. Somewhere a camera will try to blink off again. Somewhere a policy will remember its job. Somewhere someone will breathe easier because strangers chose to care. An internal newsletter asks if Carter will write a column. She declines and sends bullet points instead. Publish data. Train supervisors, not just rookies. Reward de-escalation. Record everything. Admit mistakes. Support whistleblowers. Listen longer. The editor writes back, "Not poetic, but perfect." She laughs. Policy shouldn't rhyme. It should work. She pins a photo on her board, a map of Westfield Heights without cones, kids biking through a slice of morning. If there's poetry, it lives there. Months blur, then crystallize in moments. A council reversing a bad ordinance, a chief standing beside a civilian board and promising cooperation, a judge signing an order vacating 50 convictions in one sweep, a bakery offering half-price coffee to anyone with a newly cleared record. Carter collects these like talismans and then deliberately sets them down. Wins are not destinations. They're checkpoints of a better kind, places to verify you're still headed toward equal protection with your lights on. If this story gripped you, stay with it. Support work that replaces fear with fairness. Subscribe to voices that don't just narrate outrage, but report solutions. Whether you're commuting, lifting, or letting dishes soak, choose content that adds spine to your day. Follow, share, and turn on alerts so you're there when the next chapter drops. Cases cracked open, rights restored, systems tuned toward dignity. Black Culture Story brings justice narratives to life, voice only and focused, so you can listen while you keep moving. Your attention funds stories that matter and the people telling them. Black culture story where accountability gets a microphone and due process keeps the beat. If Veronica Carter's fight found a place in you, pass it along. Somewhere, someone needs the blueprint. Somewhere, a camera is staying on. Somewhere, a checkpoint is coming down. And somewhere, a kid pedals through a morning without glancing toward a cone or a badge. Just a road, open like it always should have been.